Hello and welcome vegan savages to another training video. Today we talk about, originally I wanted to talk about volume, but I opened my V-Gains training guide and volume is super complex, and I read it and I was like, this is picture perfect. I just cannot say it like this, so I need more preparation. We cover volume another time. I probably will butcher it, only cover half of that. But if you want it all now, then get my V-Gains nutrition guide. I all wrote it down, easy to understand, but complex. You know all that is important. And here in the videos, I try to cover the most important stuff, but it's also still only a fracture of that stuff, because training smart, building muscle is richly complex, but fundamentally simple. But I need to write all that complexity, is that a word? Complexity down, that you understand it. And here I only cover a fraction. So if you want it all now, V-Gains training guide. So that takes the weight out of my shoulder. I can butcher it here in the videos because I wrote it down picture perfect in my ebook. But today we will talk about, you already know, I don't, and we talk about intensity. Intensity, it's not what many people misunderstand when they hear intensity. It's not how intense you train. It's not how much you sweat, how exhausting the training was. No. It's how heavy you train. And you measure that by two main factors. Number one, your 1 rep max. How much you can do 1 rep of the compound movement. For example, you can bench press 1 rep with 100 kilogram. That is your 1 rep max. You can only accomplish 1 rep with that amount of weight with proper form. Thus, if you train an intensity of 80%, you bench press 80 kilograms, because that is 80% of 100 kilograms is 80 kilograms. That would be 80% intensity. Then the other way to measure intensity is the RPE scale. That is basically how many reps you have left in the tank. It goes from 1 to 10. If you bench press with an RPE of 8, that means you have 2 more reps with proper form in the tank. So you stop at 8 and that was exhausting, but you still could accomplish 2 more reps with proper form. For example, an RPE 9 would be that you could have performed 1 more rep with proper form. An RPE of 10 would mean you could accomplish 0 reps with proper form, meaning training until muscle failure, what I don't recommend. So now, why don't I recommend training until muscle failure? Because building muscle, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. If you will always train until muscle failure, your risk of injury is that much greater, because when you train until muscle failure, your form will suffer. You will squeeze out more reps, or just get the bar up, or just with the deadlift weight, push it somehow up. Your your back is not straight, and your shoulders get in a weird position, and you press and you pull, and then you can hurt yourself easily, and you defeat the purpose, because you're often then not using the target muscle, but you use momentum, you use other muscle. So don't train until muscle failure for the compound movements all the time, because for the risk of injury, and because your regeneration will take much longer, and also your central nervous system is put under so much stress, and it has to perform in every training. It's not like a muscle. You rest on a day and you train another day, like on my upper body training. My legs can rest, but my central nervous system, it can't rest. It has to function in every single training, and that's why we shouldn't train all the time until muscle failure, because it is so much stress for our central nervous system, and then we can experience low energy, a loss of motivation, brain fog, and we get into an overreaching and then overtraining state, what we want to avoid. That's why we want to deload every 4, 5, 6 weeks or so, which we will cover in another video. But that's why, yeah, don't train until muscle failure all the time. And then, as I said, because your form will suffer, your elbows start to hurt, your knees, your wrist, your shoulder, because the form suffers. It's inevitable. You cannot train until muscle failure with perfect form. That is basically impossible. You can train until muscle failure for isolation exercises with small muscles, for example, biceps curls or triceps push down, no problem, because the risk of injury is really low, because what happened, you cannot curl the weight up, so you just let it down, that's it. But if you try to deadlift 200 kilograms and you pump out reps until muscle failure, your back isn't straight and boom, a disc pops out your vertebra just like that, and you maybe cannot deadlift ever again. So don't train until muscle failure for the compound movements, but you can do it at the end for some isolation movements, no problem. So I got that out of the way. Now, then how intense should we train if we shouldn't train until muscle failure? Good that you ask. Let's cover that, because that is the most important question we cover now. First of all, we have to train heavier than 50% of our 1 rep max, because if we train lighter, we don't adapt by building muscle. We always adapt somehow, but if it's lighter than 50% of our 1 rep max, then we adapt by other factors like endurance, lactose tolerance, better provision of energy and so on, but not by building muscle. But if our goal is to build muscle, we need to train heavier than 50% of our 1 rep max. But that is mostly common sense, because if you train lighter than 50% of your 1 rep max, it's so light that you do like 20, 25, 30 reps, which most people who want to build muscle don't do. They stay in a range of 5 to 15 reps. And if you do that, if you don't do more than 15 reps, then you're most likely already over 50% of your 1 rep max. Otherwise it would be so easy. Imagine your 1 rep max for bench press is 100 kilogram. That means you have to train heavier than 50 kilograms for reps to build muscle. But most people do that because otherwise it would be so light, they pump out so many reps. So that is mostly common sense. Higher than 50% of your 1 rep max, but we don't want to also not to train too heavy, meaning I wouldn't train above 90% of your 1 rep max, because then you can only do a couple of reps because it's so heavy, and then it's really hard to accumulate enough volume, because per set you can only do 2, 3, maybe 4 reps with 90% of your 1 rep max, and thus it's hard to accumulate enough volume. As I said, we will cover volume in another video, or get it all now, V-Gains training guide. Back to the point, the range should be 60 to 90% of your 1 rep max. That is the sweet spot, and that automatically brings you in a rep range of 6 to 12 reps. One way to look at it. The other way is the RPE scale. Training in an RPE scale between 6 to 9. Meaning you have 6, meaning you have 4 reps in the tank. 9, meaning you have 1 rep in the tank. So again, don't train until muscle failure. Keep at least 1 rep in the tank with proper form. Otherwise your form will suffer, you will hurt yourself, you defeat the purpose, your central nervous system will break down. So not until muscle failure for the compound movements. I recommend for upper body, you can train closer to muscle failure, around 9 on the RPE scale, so only 1 rep in the tank with proper form. And for your lower training, I recommend only 8, so 2 more reps with proper form, because there the risk of injury is even higher with squats, with deadlifts, because we can move even more weight. So let me summarize. I know this was confusing for you, and it is, as I said, it's richly complex, but fundamentally simple. So if you're still watching, I salute you for that. And the 2 ways, as I said, 60 to 90% of your 1 rep max, that range, or 6 to 9 on the RPE scale. Stay in this range. This is the sweet spot for intensity, and that automatically puts you in a rep range of 5 to 15 reps. And then it comes to periodizing your training. On one day you do like 6 reps, on the other 8, and on the other 10. But that's another topic for another video. The takeaway is, don't train until muscle failure for the compound movements all the time. Don't train too light, not under 50% of your 1 rep max, because you won't adjust by building muscle. You will adapt by other factors like endurance. And if you want to build muscle, then you need to train heavier than 50% of your 1 rep max, but also not too heavy. So the sweet spot is 5 to 15 reps, is 60 to 90% of your 1 rep max, or 6 to 9 on the RPE scale. Whew, I'm sorry if this was super confusing. That's why an ebook is so much smarter to give you all this input, because I can write it down, you can read slowly, you can read it again. In my ebook I always give examples with figures, so it's much easier to understand. But I want to give more knowledge out for free, if in case you don't want to buy the ebook. So I started the series, and just stay tuned. This was a complex video, intensity. The last two, progression and frequency, wasn't that complex. The next one, volume, will be even more complex, so I don't know how we get through this. But in the future there are videos which are easy, so just click on the ones you're interested in. When I talk about, I don't know, I want to keep going with this series. I love to do that, so we will do videos about low energy, mobility, motivation, training split, how to customize your training plan, which exercise to pick, so much more. I can do endless videos of training. I educated myself so much about training. But as I said, if you want it all now combined together with training plans, VGains Training Guide at vgains.org. Stop talking here. You're probably at home super confused. You look like this emoji right here. I'm sorry for that. Maybe watch it again and it makes more sense. Or my ebook, I stopped blogging. I said it 10,000 times, but that's just the place where I wrote it all down together, and I'm still talking about it. So just stop now. Thank you so much for watching. Make those vegan, cruelty, smart gains cruelty free. Don't make cruelty gains. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. Why do I whisper now? I don't know. I'm just a weirdo. Should I get a Vegan Savage merch shirt that says weirdo? Whispering weirdo? Thanks for watching. Until next time. Peace.